Welcome to Humanist Views, a program where you look at current issues from a humanist point of view. I'm Scott Lohman. On tonight's program, we're going to take a look at how religion and free thought and humanism work in another part of the world, so it's not going to be that far away. We're going to take a look at how it is in Canada with all the changes going on. You probably hear debates regarding their laws regarding how gays are treated, how religion is treated. So we're going to get a point of view from a Canadian native who's now relocated to Minnesota to tell us on how that went into place and what's going on there, so that we can get fact from a free thought point of view. So I'd like to welcome Jason Thibeault.
My great pleasure.
Welcome, Jason. And you are a blogger on Freethought Blogs at Lousy Canuck.
Correct.
And why did you pick that name, just to jump right in?
Well, if I just wanted to go by the blog's subtitle, it's because I don't watch enough hockey, I don't eat enough bacon, I don't drink enough beer. But on balance, I generally have been significantly more interested in world politics than Canadian politics. But when I was awakened to the whole idea that religion and politics sort of intermingle, I did have a political awakening for Canadian, how the religious in politics attempt to create policy.
Okay, so have you always been a free thinker, or did you, like many of us, come from religion?
I did come from religion. I was raised in a primarily Roman Catholic, French Roman Catholic area in northern New Brunswick, which is relatively rural. The town that I lived in had a lead refinery nearby, a mine nearby, and a paper mill. And it was very significantly, I would say almost 95% Roman Catholic. My father was a liberal Roman Catholic. My mother, less so. We generally didn't go to church after confirmation, roughly. I was confirmed, and then we stopped going. It was around then that I kind of figured out that, hey, all of these religions, they have all these competing claims, and not all of them can be, right, but it is possible for all of them to be wrong. So that's kind of how I got my start down the road of skepticism and free thought.
Yeah, for most of us, it's like, I got questions.
Exactly.
And like people like to say, well, religion's a quest for truth. That's what we've started out with, is we start questioning those beliefs. First, the ones we're going into, it's like, yeah, some of this is just not making logical sense in comparing the world to that. So
definitely,
that's the neat thing about that is you start questioning, and sometimes it starts with something not quite at the religion stage. So you start with the easy things like Santa, UFOs, and then move on to other stuff.
Yeah. And if Dad has been lying to you about Santa Claus all this time, what is he saying about Jesus?
There you go. There have been a number of people that they start doing that. So, but most good parents, if they're going to play that, will go, and when the kids start asking serious questions, you give them the serious answer and make them compute. That's what we did with my son, and that worked really well.
That's excellent. Excellent.
It's a great way of doing that. So, so as you worked your way out, what did you then start seeing as you were looking at the religious thing, especially in a small town? And I grew up in one of those, so I totally understand religion in that.
Well, one of the first things that I noticed was that I didn't really have a good way of expressing my doubts to anybody without raising people's hackles. I was keenly aware that just about everybody in my community was, they all had the crosses on their necks, and for a time I even wore one just for the sake of try to ward people away from me. And no, I'm really one of you, even though secretly inward, I don't believe a word of anything that you're saying. I did find it very difficult to come to terms with the fact that if religion was wrong, then basically everything was up for grabs, that I had to start pretty much from square one with everything that I was told, that that UFOs existed. My father was actually quite a significant UFO believer. I don't know how much of it was because he liked sci-fi. He was a big Star Trek nerd, but he also had the Communion book, the one that was based on the movie. Yeah.
Whitley Strieber's one, yes.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, that was sort of one of the ones when I started reading, going, no. That was the start of the end for me.
So yeah, there were a lot of other little things like that. Astrology, lots of people believed in alternative medicine. Hell, when I was becoming a free thinker, I had this tendency of every time we were in the supermarket checkout line, wanting to pick up a copy of the Weekly World News. And a few times with my allowance, I did. Mostly to read the stories about Bat Boy and to laugh at the people who think that a pit was opened to all the way to hell. But at the same time, I was also drawn to those advertisements in the back that claimed that you could learn how to read minds, you could get X-ray spectacles. You're a young, horny teenager at 14, 15, and you think, oh, that would be awesome.
Yes,
and then,
exactly.
And then some of the more privacy-related issues to that start to clue in, and you start feeling awful for ever thinking that.
Yeah, most of us guys got that from comic books, so it's good you were a Weekly World News reader on that. That's just great on that part. So then did you start developing interest more in science, or did you go more on the philosophical approach in your atheism or humanism at that point?
I think, honestly, most of my philosophy as I was growing up came from video games. I learned a lot about religion, especially mythology. I fell in love with Greek and Roman and Norse mythology playing role-playing games.
Cool.
Yeah, where you play the console RPGs and the big boss is this name like Bahamut, and you go and you look it up and you find out that's a Judeo-Christian myth. What?
Yep.
Yeah, it was an eye-opening experience for me, and I think that was actually one of the, now that I think about it, one of the formative reasons why I started to question religion. And so through my childhood, I very significantly kept an eye out for that kind of thing. I looked for role-playing games where I could learn more about mythology, where I could be clued in that such things existed, and where I could get an understanding of the wider world of mythology just based on those video games. And that sort of translated into comic books for a while. I was a Spider-Man reader, and I knew the Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery the way some people know the story of Job. And I immersed myself in geek culture. I was a computer nerd before I really decided to, my life's ambition when I got out of high school was to become an English teacher and to try to expand the minds of people that I know and try to shape the next generation. But I ended up, I don't deal so well with real people. I ended up falling into a call center job and doing tech support, and I realized that I'm really decent at computers, and that's sort of how my life has been shaped since then.
Yeah, and technology is a very cool thing, as we're finding out in the news as we're taping this particular episode. So let's take a look at how Canada's religious culture is different than the United States. Is Canada a little more secular than we are in the U.S. based on relative small observances that you've had?
I need to set this up a little bit for you. We have a Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms that was instituted in '82, I think. I am a lousy Canuck. You're going to have to pardon me if I get some dates wrong.
That's okay. People can look those things up.
Exactly. So Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and one of the things that it specifically enshrines is freedom of religion and freedom of conscience. However, there is absolutely no Establishment Clause equivalent. So there's no separation of church and state.
Okay.
And yet, despite this, right now we have roughly twice the secular, the non-believing, the people who actually describe themselves as nuns.
Okay.
Than compared to America. There's roughly 38% Roman Catholic, but there's something like 23% non-believers.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is much bigger than what we've got here.
And I don't know exactly what percentage of that would call themselves explicitly atheist, but there's almost no churchgoers regularly. Even countrywide, there's roughly 20% who say that they go to church at all.
Okay.
So churches are dwindling in Canada, despite no establishment clause, despite the express freedom of religion. But what you'll find is that secularism kind of comes from a place of political awareness about how religion and politics intersect.
Okay.
You get a politician who espouses religion, and they will get almost no votes. Whereas here, you pretty much can't get elected unless you say, God bless America.
Yeah. So far, we have yet to have an explicit atheist go from announcing a candidate and getting elected. They only have to be quite closeted, almost in a sense.
And if anybody were to want to smear them, they could just call you a godless liberal.
Yeah. There you go.
But in Canada, when Stephen Harper, our current Prime Minister, when he was recently at a convocation, it was a service of some sort, there was a big to-do about the fact that he took a host and he apparently pocketed it because he was at a service for it was a different sect, a different I don't remember all of the details, but it actually turned into a big deal. And it's to the point where, effectively, if people knew that Harper was as fundamentalist evangelical religious as he is, they probably would not have voted for him.
Interesting on that part, especially since we see candidates that's a big thing,
Right.
And especially in a number of states and even here in Minnesota.
Right.
So, so you've seen that. Does Canada have like the craziness we have, especially when it comes to church-state issues like regarding teaching of science and creationism and evolution battles that we have basically going on almost all the time in places?
As far as I know, and my experience was actually slightly skewed. Being in the northern New Brunswick Roman Catholic area, the schools didn't really teach me evolution as deeply as I might have liked. They sort of danced around it by teaching about the whales and teaching about various homologous bone structures and such. But they never really explicitly said evolution. And at one point, I think somebody actually suggested that I read on Origin of Species outside of class as like extra credit. I think specifically to try to point me in the right direction to the information that I wasn't getting there.
Okay.
But as far as I can tell, there is no actual systemic suppression of teaching evolution. In my case, I think it was just that while the information was in the textbooks, it was kind of glossed over, kind of skipped over because it was too controversial.
Okay. So there's sort of something in the air, so to speak, of having science teachers sort of pull back on that subject as opposed to explicit pressure that we see here.
Right.
Okay.
I don't think you'd have giant battles like you do in Texas over the textbooks. And, there would never be in Canada, I can't imagine there being any one central staging ground for that kind of thing, where just by getting evolution struck from Texan textbooks, you basically win the entire country.
Yeah, it gets flown away just because of the nature of our scale, economy of scale and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's sort of like Texas is your Arrakis, and whoever controls the spice control the dune. So
exactly, that's a nerd reference for those of you out there. Look it up, Wikipedia. There you go. So on that sort of thing, and does it also? You mentioned the Prime Minister dealing with that. Do you see other religious issues getting into more explicit politics?
There has been a slight resurgence recently of political parties attempting to intermesh religion back into public policy. There's the explicitly extreme right-wing Wild Rose Party, which basically doesn't get out of Alberta because Alberta's provincial flower is the wild rose.
Okay.
They pretty much are a one province party, but they're made up primarily of people who found that the original progressive conservatives were not regressive enough.
Okay.
They were not far right enough. They're the Tea Party to an already Tea Party-like party.
Okay, so that's moving way off into the fringy parts there. Okay.
It is. There's a bit of a skew to the way that American and Canadian politicians work. I hate to say it, but you don't appear to have a left-wing party.
No.
No, you have a centrist party and a right-wing party, and then the right wing is splintering off into another far right wing.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
Yeah, when you look at politics, that big, broad spectrum of political theory on that, there's considerable issues on how the far left was sort of made to go extinct in this country, which is a full college course that could go 3 quarters on that to go through that kind of stuff.
Easily, yeah.
So we're not going to cover that. We'll just know that, that pretty much covers that. And you guys, it kind of seem to me skews further, a little more leftish than we do, so that your right sort of gets into our central and then...
Yes.
Okay.
Our Conservative Party is a party that was... they had to form a coalition in order to break the liberal stranglehold over the country, and the liberals are the centrists.
Okay.
In creating their coalition party, they combined the centrist conservatives and the progressive conservatives, who, despite the name, they were actually further right.
Okay.
So they were the far right party, merging with the centrist parties, and they were picking up all of the fringe people that the liberals were losing as a result of lack of faith in them due to some political scandals. You're in office for too long, you're in office for 14 years, and something's bound to come.
Oh yeah, something's going to explode on you no matter what you do there.
Pretty much.
So let's take a look at, there's the things related to, because Canada had gay marriage ahead of the well ahead of the United States, because it's
right.
legal nationwide, correct?
97, I believe, they gained the rights to civil unions, and 2005, Canada-wide, was marriage by name of marriage, save for Prince Edward Island, who it took a threat of a lawsuit to actually, okay, get with the program. We've just enacted gay marriage across the rest of the nation. If somebody decides to sue you, we're hanging you out to dry. So.
Okay, I like that. That's one way to get that last bunch in there.
Exactly.
But you also have the law that I will listen to conservative and Christian radio, and they talk about how there's the control of the free speech, or it's what am I looking for? Where they can criticize things.
There is actually, there are hate speech provisions that prevent things like incitement to violence against minorities like gays. And this, of course, gets the Christians' knickers in a twist, obviously. Yes. I mean, their Jimmy's status is permanently rustled over this, just by virtue of not being allowed to tell people that gays are going to hell. But guess what? Just like here, they're allowed to tell people that gays are going to hell. They have the exact same situation where they, under the religious freedom of religion, they can talk about their beliefs the line is drawn when they are attacking somebody with those beliefs. If they were to say harass and target a specific person, they could very easily make a case that that was targeted hate speech.
Okay.
I'm against the hate speech laws in general. It's a very fine line to try to tread to prevent making something that can be used as a club against atheists like us. If you want to try to say that a religion it's not particularly correct in any respect, that could be seen as offensive to somebody, just by virtue of them having internalized their religion as being part of themselves.
Right.
They think that, oh, we're hating them. No, we just disagree with their beliefs. I personally, my philosophy, you can believe whatever you'd like. It's just if you want to try to set policy by it, you better bring the facts to the table.
Yeah, and that's generally the concern of most humanists and atheists on that is, let's do this rationally and as common sense, because we all have to live with these laws. We don't want to big, so it starts pulling things like that. So
yeah, you don't. Anytime that science and religion intersect, and science has proof, I don't want to destroy history books that talk about the moon landing because the Hare Krishna say that it's impossible to land on the moon because the moon is further away than the sun. That's just blinkered. You can't subjugate reality to a person's particular whims just because some book written a very long time ago says something different than we have proof of and can do again.
Yes, and there are reflectors on the moon that we can shoot lasers at.
Yep.
And still check that they're still there.
Yep.
So, what got you interested in then blogging on that? Because that's one of those phenomenons that people have started doing and will switch a lot, but still actually seems to have some very serious followings.
When I originally wanted to be an English teacher, I think a lot of the pull was specifically to be able to write. And I did not comprehend that being an actual English teacher just meant that I'd be constantly subjected to a stream of bad writing by my students.
Yeah.
So I got it into my head that I wanted to try to sharpen that knife that I had let get particularly rusty as I pursued my computer career. And I just decided to put together a blog. And I very quickly, like within 3 or 4 posts, realized that all of those things that I had, that had been chewing at me, all of those things that I needed to say about things that people were wrong about repeatedly, I needed to say those things. And I found that just writing them was cathartic.
Okay.
I didn't do it for a following. I still don't do it for a following. I'm blessed that I have people who actually think that my opinion is worth reading. And I am constantly impressed that I can actually change this world just by putting memes out there. Memes that are, that undercut the things that I identify as harming our community, harming our society, harming the world ultimately. And not just in matters of religion. There's lots of other ridiculous sticking points that people have. Matters of sexism, of racism, of just about every social justice issue there is. My sister is gay, and I've become really sensitized to that. Two of my co-bloggers at Freethought Blogs enlightened me to the idea that I was being cis-sexist anytime I made mention of, a woman is a woman because she has woman parts. That doesn't mean anything. A person is who they present themselves as. I've gone through a cycle of enlightenments through various social justice ideas. And the really interesting thing is, just by being an atheist, I came upon the idea that people are really shitty to each other for a lot of things, just for being different. Just by my not believing in God, people were being shitty to me for no apparent reason. And I apologize if there's, any kind of advocation against swearing, but I feel really passionately about that.
Yes. Yeah, that one won't get us in trouble, so.
Okay.
Because we'll safe hour, and we're far enough in, so.
Well, People are really mean and cruel and vindictive for innumerable reasons, and you can't just confront people on one.
Mm-hmm.
If you notice somebody being cruel to somebody on some other point that is patently wrong, that is patently antisocial, that is demonstrably harmful, you have to challenge them on it. And that's what my blog has become. It's become my platform to say, this thing that you did, I disagree with it. And that often gets me in trouble because I don't shy away from saying, this person who is a leader, that thing that you said, I disagree with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, for a leaderless movement, I often get into trouble just by daring to speak up to certain people.
It is our community is a very interesting community because we don't have, the hierarchies that religion has.
Right.
We basically sort of have to self-organize on that, and that just makes for a wee bit of chaos and craziness on that part. So, yeah.
There tend to be like some people who are put on pedestals, which is an interesting phenomenon for a community of rationalists.
It is.
Anytime I point it out, I usually get, that's when I get the most people who are very shouty and ranty and angry at me.
Yeah, yes, we do have some that are looked upon that way, but also we all go once in a while, it's like, you're really good in this area, but could you just shut up about that section over there?
Yeah, just shut up and listen for now.
Yes, exactly. work on being educated and enlightened on those sort of things, as we should be on that, because the cool thing is that you're looking at that as a quest for knowledge and a quest for understanding yourself, as well as understanding your fellow human beings that way. And it amazes me that the internet is such a powerful tool for us, even with all of its faults. For us as a movement, it is one of our best tools.
Oh, absolutely. If you ever want to find your fellow transsexual Nazi Eskimos, the internet will find you one.
Of which, it amazes me when you start looking for, it's like, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know other people were into that like I was. I thought I was pretty much the only one.
Greta Christina does this whole thing about her use of the internet to find people with similar kinks. She does this great speech about that. You should listen to it.
I should check that out, because she definitely would have us rolling in the aisles on
Yes.
that particular one.
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
we're coming up to the end of the program. So, what are just some things people should, is one of your quests to get going besides the social justice area that you're looking to help people with the blog, or maybe you're just doing it just so it's out of your head and out in the world?
Yeah, that is mostly why I'm doing it, mostly because I'm afraid that if I don't ever write down all of the things that I want to say, somebody might not get to one of them. I don't know that I've said anything particularly interesting or unique in this world, but just in case, in case. I'd recommend everybody do it.
Sounds good. And so I'd like to thank you for being on the program. It's been great chatting with you tonight.
Great. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And so for more information on us, the Humanists of Minnesota, you can go to our website at humanistsofmn.org. We'd like to hear what you think about this program and any topics you'd like to see us cover in the future. So send us an email or even send one of those old-fashioned letters. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for joining me on this edition of Humanist Views. I'm Scott Lohman. Good night.